Hello and welcome to Unacademy, one-stop destination for English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to this video of PYQ answer writing masterclass, where today in this session we shall be discussing about how to create answers for geography. What should be the basic strategy when you take a look at the question paper and you start writing the answer? What should be the thought in your mind? Now we shall also be validating it by discussing a couple of PYQs. Now for the portion of geography, overall the syllabus can be bifurcated into the physical and the Indian geography. So the PYQ also, one question we shall be taking up from the portion of physical geography, and another portion that we shall be considering will be from the portion of Indian geography. So we shall be discussing these two questions, but before that we have to understand how to create answers. Now that the prelims results have been declared, the focus has to be on the mains examination, and we are delighted to announce the launch of Conquer Mains 2024 Quality Enrichment Program, where for the next 60 days, 6 days a week, we shall be bringing for you a quality content for each of the subjects, covering topics and areas which are very frequently visited by UPSC in the examination. Every day from 10 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. we will have sessions conducted by the subject experts, and the topics along with some of the PYQs also shall be discussed there. Now on Sunday we shall be conducting a test so that you are able to validate your level of understanding and also are able to recreate the answers. Having said that, the first 6 sessions of this quality enrichment program shall be put up on YouTube absolutely for free, and that is something that you can avail the best use of. Now we have started the program since yesterday on 1st July. We had the subject of Indian economy being conducted by Shyam sir. Today we are going to have a discussion for the portion of geography, where today we are going to discuss some of the important areas in geomorphology, that is the aspect of plate tectonics, volcanism, earthquakes, and the aspects such as mantle plumes, volcanic hotspots, what they are. Now we shall be validating these. Validating as in, once you read a particular topic, you should have an idea that what kind of questions have been asked and also what kind of questions can be asked from these topics. That is something which shall be ensured. Along with that, notes shall also be provided in the PDF format. Tomorrow, you will have a session of Science and Tech by Hema Bindu ma'am. On 4th of July, History session by Abhishek sir. 5th July, a Polity session by Sarmat sir. And 6th July, IR by Chetan sir. So overall, we will ensure that your comprehensive preparation is taken care of. Now, when you prepare for the mains examination, a very important aspect of the mains examination is the preparation for optional subject. So, we at Unacademy for the first time in English medium have launched the Geography Optional Program. Now, this Geography Optional Program is as detailed and as comprehensive as it can be. Overall, in 350 plus hours, we shall be covering each and every topic mentioned in the syllabus relevant for the examination, be it for paper 1, be it for paper 2, with dedicated time spent for mapping. PDF notes shall be provided, answer evaluation shall be done, and mentorship from the side of the educator, that is from my side, that is also something that will be done. The overall aim and the point of this mains program and the optional session will be to ensure that you are able to secure 300 plus in the mains portion of the optional in geography. Geography is one of those options where 300 plus is secured quite frequently by the candidates. So you should be amongst one of those candidates. So use this code and avail maximum discount as much as possible. The sessions have started this week. So do join this course, do join the session, and ensure that your geography preparation is to the point. Having said that, now let us start with the aspect of the basic answer writing for geography. What are the things that one has to keep in mind? Now, in the mains examination, one has to keep some things or certain areas in perspective, and that is, it is your writing skill which is being tested. Nobody cares about how much effort you have put in. Nobody cares how expert you are in a particular subject. What you are writing on the piece of paper, that is what counts. So when you talk about answer writing, the answer writing has to be attractive enough to ensure that the evaluator pays attention to the entire answer that you have written. Many of the times, the candidates scribble their way through and eventually they get less than average marks. The complaint is that I had written all the content but I did not get the marks. So what can be done? So few points to keep in mind when we talk about answer writing. The first point, the most basic point where the candidates end up committing mistake is ensure that you have to write what is asked in the paper, in the question, and not what you know. Now this might seem a very simple sentence, that isn't it what the mains examination is about? Replying and answering to what the question paper is. But this is where many of the candidates commit mistakes. For example, let's suppose a question has come about the Circum-Pacific Zone or the Pacific Ring of Fire. Now, if a question is asking you about, let's suppose, why there are earthquakes, seismic activities, as well as volcanic activities around that region, the evaluator expects you to stick to that. Many of the students, because they are so very well versed in that particular area, their eyes immediately light up by taking a look at the question that, okay, this is a topic that I know. They start with the basics of plate tectonics, they cover the entire theory of plate tectonics, and at the end, when they run out of space and time, they somehow fit in the points. When the evaluator starts reading your answer, their eyes, they search for where those keywords are. But you have written so many things which are not required. You have wasted the time, you have wasted your space, and created a bad impression in the minds of the evaluator. This is something that you should keep in mind regardless of the subject, regardless of the GS paper, that please answer to the point. Then, another aspect, the answer should always have a flow. What do we mean by that? Have a flow. This is simple. Basically, the introduction should direct the main question. Now, this does not mean that you start repeating it. For example, if a question is, what are urban heat islands? What can be the solution to these urban heat islands? Now here, when you write the answer, the introduction has to talk about the concept of urban heat islands. You do not, or necessarily you do not have to start with urban heat islands are these conditions. You don't have to be repetitive. But at the same time, you can start your introduction by saying that in the urban landscape, one experiences an extraordinary surge in temperature as compared to the surrounding areas. That is largely caused by many factors, but this unusual surge is what is referred to as a heat island. Now, what you have done in the brief introduction is you have given an idea to the evaluator that I know this concept. I will talk about this concept. And when you have written that it is controlled or contributed by multiple factors, you have already provided a flow from where in the body you can directly start with the factors. And that is very important. Your introduction, your body should have a kind of a consonance, should have a kind of a fluidity associated. Now, after this, the next point that you have to keep in mind while you are writing the answer is the case of points and subparagraphs. Now, here, you also have to ensure that while you are writing the answer, the introduction should not be very, very long. The introduction, as many of the candidates, when they start writing the answer, they create a 45-50 worded introduction itself. That is not required. That is no longer an introduction anymore. That becomes a major chunk of the answer itself. Introduction has to be brief, between 25 to 30 words, at max around 35 words. And use that introduction to create a kind of a movement into the body as well. Now, once you are writing the answer for the body, that is where points and sub-paragraphs, they come in handy. Now here, what do we mean by points and sub-paragraphs? Do you have to write an answer in a long scribbling paragraph manner? That I have done so much of an effort to create the answer. Now the evaluator should also put in some effort to basically read the answer? No. You have to ensure that your answer is easily legible and is attractive enough for the evaluator to put his or her attention there. Now, how do you do that? So the basic aspect is, first of all, let's suppose you are writing an answer for any concept, be it Indian geography, be it physical geography, or for any other subject as well. This is what you can implement. Right? For example, we were talking about urban heat islands. Now, why do urban heat islands get created? Now, one of the reasons for that is basically the huge amount of pollution. So here you write pollution. After you have written pollution, underline that. And then write a couple of sentences about pollution. Not a long paragraph, a couple of sentences. After that, let's suppose you write another point, and that is concretization. That is, the concrete structures absorb greater amount of heat, and that is why the urban areas are so very hot. So this is again something that you can highlight by a couple of more sentences. Then after that, let's assume that you are writing about lack of wind movement, right? So talk about wind movement. Here then write a couple of sentences about how the wind movement is altered because of the close vicinity and the close architecture in the urban areas. Like this, what you are doing is that even if, let's suppose, somebody pays attention to the major points that you have written, they will be able to understand what you are trying to convey. It will make your answers presentation much better. It will make your answers overall appeal much better. You will end up scoring at least 1 marks on an average higher than your competition. That is all that is needed. Imagine 1 to 1.5 marks higher than your competition in every answer. 20 answers in one GS paper. You are looking at a 30 marks advantage per GS paper. Overall, GS paper 1 to 4, you are looking at an advantage of 100 to 120 marks over your competition. That is more than sufficient to swing the balance your way. Please understand one thing. When you are writing the answer, 3 important components are to be kept in mind. Content, presentation, everything to be done within the time limit. Any of these, if it is lacking, you will get lesser marks. Most important is content, but you need the evaluator to read the content. For that, you need better presentation. But that needs to be done within the time limit. Every answer on an average 8 to 9 minutes. That will come with practice. Now, in aspect of geography, you need diagrams. Diagrams or representative maps or flowcharts. With each answer, minimum of 1 diagram, or minimum of 1 representative map is required. You should not have an answer without a diagram. At least a flowchart should be indicated. Now, how do you do that? Which diagram do you draw? Depending upon the demand of the question. And after that, the conclusion. Conclusion has to be brief. Conclusion has to be the summarization, not repetition, but summarization of what you have written. And if there is a problem-based question, for example, India is facing water scarcity, India is facing a lot of energy demand, Let's suppose there is an issue regarding urban floods. The conclusion has to take the shape of way forward, but at the same time needs to have a positive outlook. You cannot write a conclusion that everything is done for, there is gloom all around, that kind of a conclusion. If these things continue, we won't have a place to live, etc. No. If we take these steps, then we can make the lives of these millions of citizens much better. That shows your optimistic approach as well. So like that, you can create the answers overall. Just ensure that these basic points are kept in mind for the subject of geography. Wherever possible, implement it in other areas also, and you will find that at the end of the day, you will be scoring much better. Now let us take a look at a couple of these PYQs. Let us try to understand what are the basic points to be kept in mind while writing the answers. Now, this is a question which was asked a couple of years ago. What are the forces that influence ocean currents? Describe their role in the fishing industry of the world. Now, by the way, this is a topic of oceanography which has been touched by UPSC multiple times when it comes to the GS paper, when it comes to even the optional area. The forces that influence the ocean currents. Now here, as I told you, the introduction has to address the main part of the question. So here what your introduction will address. When you are writing the intro for this, the main subject of the question is ocean currents. Then you have to talk about the forces, right? So first of all, address the ocean currents. A definite, directional, regular movement of water within the oceans is what is referred to as an ocean current. These oceanic waters move in a set direction, carrying huge volumes on a regular basis like rivers moving within the oceans. They are influenced by a variety of factors, primary as well as secondary. That is something where you can elaborate that what you are going to talk about in the sense of the factors also. Or simply just writing about the ocean currents in itself would also be sufficient. Then in that case, the first sentence of your body has to talk about that these ocean currents are controlled by various different types of factors which can be divided or classified into primary and secondary. So in the intro, talk about what these ocean currents are. Okay? So what are these ocean currents? Regular streamlined flow of water in the oceans in a set direction. Now, these ocean currents, they are themselves controlled by a variety of factors. They can be classified as primary and secondary. But if you were to talk about the factors which would control this, what are the various different factors? So the factors controlling the ocean currents. First of all, you can talk about the major factor, that is heating by the sun. Heating by the sun. Okay? So that heating by the sun, what does it do? It creates a slight expansion of water in the lower latitudes. Water level in the lower latitude, due to this heating, due to high amount of insolation, expands by almost around 8 to 10 centimeter. This provides a height gradient between the lower latitude to the higher latitude. So automatically a flow is induced from the lower latitude to the higher latitude, right? So this provides a kind of a bulge or a thermal expansion. Right? Now, other than this, just this expansion won't be sufficient. Other than this, you have a very important factor of prevailing winds. Here, prevailing winds basically refer to the planetary system of winds that we have, the trade winds, the westerlies, the polar easterlies. Now, these prevailing winds, they are able to carry this water from one particular region to another. You already have slight bulge provided in the water. Then, if the winds are blowing in this direction, they will be carrying the water in that direction. So these winds, the permanent wind systems, provide direction. Direction is provided. Or directionality is provided. Now, after this, you have another factor, and that is the factor of Coriolis force. Now understand, all this basically, what you are writing here, all these needs to follow that point and sub-paragraph format. For example, when you are writing about the prevailing winds, write a couple of sentences. And also validate this with the help of examples. Write the examples, the required examples in that area. For example, the trade winds, they carry the water from a direction of east to west in lower latitude. That will be an example. Then Coriolis force. Now, ocean currents moving in the northern hemisphere, they will always be bending in the rightward direction. That is why overall, the oceanic circulation, be it the Atlantic, be it the Pacific or the South Indian Ocean, there you will always have a clockwise circulation in the northern hemisphere and anti-clockwise circulation in the southern hemisphere. Here, when you are talking about the importance of the winds, you can also highlight the case of northern Indian Ocean. That in northern Indian Ocean, that is the only case where the ocean currents, they change their direction with the changing of the wind pattern, which also again highlights how important wind is. After this, you talk about other smaller factors as well, such as the shape of the coastline, shape of coastline. Then here you can give example for, suppose you talk about the division of the ocean currents when they approach the Caribbean or the Antilles Islands. You talk about the bending of the ocean currents across the North American coastline. That is something that you can talk about and validate with the help of examples. If you have to draw the diagram, let's suppose you are not very good at drawing a good map. There, just show a representative diagram like this. Land, sea. Talk about that how the shape of the coastline initiates a movement, influences the movement like this. This will also be good enough. Then after this, you have the bottom relief features. Bottom relief features. Bottom relief features such as the case of mid-oceanic ridges. Here give the example of the Wyville-Thomson Ridge in the region of northern Atlantic, where this Wyville-Thomson Ridge basically provides a kind of an obstruction to the North Atlantic Drift, due to which these will trifurcate. The North Atlantic Drift also ends up trifurcating when it hits that mid-oceanic ridge. All that you can elaborate. Now, once you have done that, you have addressed the main question. Right? Once you have done this, you have basically managed to address the main question. Now, once you have highlighted these, basically after that, you can then move on to the second part of the question, because that means you have addressed the main part of the question. After that, go to the second part, that describe their role in the fishing industry. Now, ocean currents have got a substantial role to play in the fishing industry as well. For example, wherever you have the mixing of the cold and the warm ocean currents, that is an ideal fishing zone of the world. Here give examples of which regions create these opportunities. So here you can validate with the examples. Suppose you talk about the region of northeastern part of North America. There you will have the Gulf Stream meeting with the cold Labrador Current. And also in the region of northwestern Pacific, where you will have the Kuroshio Current meeting with the cold Oyashio Current. These examples, when you will highlight, you have addressed that. Now, after that, how do you conclude the answer? In the conclusion part, you talk about the fact that these ocean currents help in various different aspects or influence our lives in multifarious ways, from the influence in the weather conditions, influence on the climate, to influence on our food pattern, to the influence in navigation and trade. Hence, these ocean currents need to be understood at a greater detail in order to facilitate or in order to ease our own lives and in order to have a better understanding, right? So like that, you can provide the conclusion and you write this entire answer. Try writing it on your own, get it evaluated so that you get an idea about how the answer needs to be written. Then we move on to another question about Indian geography. Now this is a question about differentiate the causes of landslides in the Himalayan region and the Western Ghats. Now, when we talk about this particular aspect of landslides, again a frequently visited area by UPSC, landslides in Himalayan region, landslides in Western Ghats, very frequently asked. Now here you have to talk about the differentiation, but does not mean that UPSC is asking you to draw a table, Himalayas, Western Ghats, this is why landslide occurs, this is why landslide occurs. No, it is not a class 5th level answer. So in the introduction, what do you talk about? In the introduction, you talk about the landslides and you link it with the overall landslides in both the areas. So landslides are mass movements which are initiated when you have availability of large surplus amount of water, presence of loose soil, and the existence of steeper slopes. This occurs especially during the rainy season in the mountainous areas, impacting and influencing the lives and properties of many. That is something that you have highlighted. That will be your brief introduction, right, about landslides in general. Because landslides is the common theme linking both of them. Now, in the body, you start with the aspect that India is a diverse country having fragile ecosystems like the Himalayas and the Western Ghats, both of which are very prone to the occurrence of landslides. Now, there you start talking about the fact that how in the region of Himalayas, what are the factors which lead to the landslides? In the region of Western Ghats, what are the factors which lead to the landslides? So when we talk about the region of Himalayas, why do we experience landslides? So for Himalayas, you have multiple factors. First of all, it is still tectonically active. Tectonically active means it is a seismic zone. The plates are still moving, the fold is still getting exaggerated, due to which the slope has not been stable, due to which there is always a probability of the slope weakening and materials falling off. Other than that, when we talk about the Himalayas, huge sedimentary presence, sedimentary rock presence. Now, how is that important? Because when you have large amount of sediments and sedimentary rocks, these are softer rocks. So when you have excess amount of water, that excess water availability immediately starts shaving off these rocks and starts to bring them down. So that is an issue. That means the volume of material which is ready to move down, that availability suddenly increases. Then other than that, after this, you have another factor. And what is that factor? That factor is basically the presence of steep southern slope. Himalayas have a hogback topography. So as a result of that hogback topography, what do we mean by hogback topography? That the southern slopes are steeper, northern slopes are a bit gentle. So when you have the steep southern slopes, that indicates that materials have a greater influence of gravity. Then other than that, large perennial river systems. Again, increasing the amount of water availability, which induces a kind of a flow pattern. Then after that, you have incidence of cloud bursts in the region of Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. That in itself suddenly increases the amount of rainfall and the amount of overall water availability in a particular region, and that is something which is harmful. Other than that, you also have the factor of deforestation. Deforestation, meaning there are loose soil which is available. Then construction, unsustained level of construction. Then after that, mining activities, particularly in the northeastern region, mining activities. Now what all of these do, they make the slope weaker. Slope becomes weaker. Okay, the slope tends to become very weak. Now, why do we experience landslides in the region of Western Ghats? So when we talk about Western Ghats, the landslides there are primarily initiated because of two factors. Western Ghats, they are an escarpment. They are not a mountain system. They are an escarpment. Escarpment is what? It is basically created due to a normal fault when one part of the land simply sinks down. So that is an escarpment. Then other than that, escarpment means it will always have very steep vertical slope. Vertical slope. Isn't it? Other than that, Western Ghats receive amongst the highest amount of rainfall anywhere across the country. Other than the northeastern states, these are the highest recipients of rainfall. So high rainfall and some cloudburst events as well. High rains. But then in the Western Ghats, you still have those areas as densely forested, many of the areas. Hence, the amount of landslides which occur there are comparatively less. This is tectonically stable, seismically inactive. So that is why earthquakes, etc. do not occur. Then you don't have those many rivers draining through here. So that is again something due to which the number of landslides in Western Ghats is comparatively less. The mining activities thankfully have been put a stop to by the directives of the Supreme Court. So as a consequence of that, Western Ghats comparatively experience lesser landslides, but nonetheless they are prone to it. This is what you highlight in the answer, in the body portion of this answer. Now eventually, when you are concluding the answer, then what? So in the conclusion, talk about the fact that here it is a problem, landslide is a problem. So your conclusion has to morph into a kind of a way forward. When you are writing the conclusion, talk about the fact that these landslides year after year cause huge amount of loss of life and property. Proper hazard zonation and public awareness campaigns need to be carried out in order to prevent those precious lives and ensure that these critical ecosystems are conserved for posterity. So that is how you have to conclude the answer. You are providing a kind of a very brief way forward. If it would have been a 15-marker question, then you would have to provide a detailed way forward that carry out environmental impact assessments, fragile ecosystems need not be disturbed, all of that. But it is a 10-marker question. So according to the demand of the question, that is how you change the answer writing approach as well. Try to write this answer on your own, get it evaluated, and most importantly, get into the habit of writing. Answer writing is what makes the difference between you getting a rank and you trying again. I hope that this session was helpful. Now, do join me at 10:30 at 10 p.m. on YouTube so that we can be discussing some of the important topics of geomorphology from the portion of the geography. And overall, just ensure that this answer writing practice is carried out and you have a bulk of this practice before you actually enter into the exam hall. If you have liked this session, please don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button. And how did you feel the session contributed to overall content enrichment? Put that in the comment section below. Thank you and take care.